Welcome into another edition of the VHS. Andrew Wadden, producer Aaron here with you. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
You too, Aaron.
Hey.
It's been a while since we spoke to the people here. And since the last time we did get a chance to unpack the Canucks, they've been doing pretty good. Last time we spoke to you guys was on the 18th of December. Since then, 3-1-1. Get this, Aaron. They've got the attention of the Eastern media right now. Whoa! The Vancouver Canucks, of all people.
What? There's a West Coast time zone? What?
Right. I saw James Myrtle from The Athletic tweeting that the Canucks are a juggernaut after that first period that they had tonight. And this is sort of a post game, if you will, for us, because we did miss our Monday release yesterday, being that, well, it was New Year's Day and you and I are taking the day off like everybody else in society, right?
Yeah, you had to run down to the beach, man, do the polar bear swim. So
I did. My nipples are still hard from that. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm sure that's a great visual for you and the listener. But yeah, the Canucks winning 6-3 over the Ottawa Senators on their return back to play. They had a few days off there over the new year. And I'll tell you what, how about that for a first period from the Canucks? 5 goals. 6 is the most, by the way, Aaron. I had to look it up to see how many times they'd scored 5 in a period. I thought maybe 5 might be the record, but it's 6. It's happened twice. Mm-hmm. But I did see some quotes here as we record this. Literally, the game just ended, so the quotes are starting to pour in. But seeing that Rick Tocchet calling it the best period of the year, I see our boy Drancer is tweeting it here, and Drancer got himself put in line by JT Miller post-game, if you didn't see that. Good on you, JT. But Rick Tocchet says the first period was the club's best period they've played in a month. I would say that's maybe their best period they might have played under Rick Tocchet, really.
Yeah.
When you score 5 goals like that, 85%, Aaron, of the expected goals in the first period. Now,
remind me, because there was that big game at the beginning of the year with San Jose. That wasn't 5 goals in one period. I mean,
it wasn't. I looked that up as well. It was that the 10-2 game? Also, when they originally kicked off the season, I'll pull up the schedule right now. When they originally pulled up started the season with the 8-1 win over the Oilers, of course, they didn't score 5 in that game as well. They had 2-3-3 in that one. So they spread out the scoring in that one. Same thing in that San Jose win where they won. It was 10-1, not 10-2. We didn't score 5 in a period in that one as well. So, and a fantastic first period for the Canucks. And honestly, I kind of thought that this might be one of those games, just looking at their schedule and the time that they did have off and the fact that it's New Year's Eve. And, you know, most people get drunk on New Year's Eve or at least party on New Year's Eve to some degree. You know, the Canucks playing last on the 28th. So they had a few days off. Maybe
everybody made it for curfew on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. And they probably got a text from Tocchet, just his face. That's what I would do. If I was
12:01, right? At 12:01, 30 seconds, it's just Tocchet, just like, all right, get to bed.
If I was Rick Tocchet and I look like that, I would just send you pictures of me pissed off because that'd be enough to scare you, really. But I mean, hey, kudos to them, like for the fact that they had some time off and they didn't let any rust at all. Like they were fantastic in that first period, as mentioned, but they were fantastic in this game throughout. Like Ottawa's one of those teams. Like, you know, you can get on top of them early. They're not having a good year. They're fighting their way to get back into things right now. And it's funny when you look at the games played for Ottawa as well. They're still playing catch up with most of the league, but Canucks didn't consider any of that. They just looked at the opponent that was on the schedule and took care of business. So a good win.
Year, new me.
Same old really for the Canucks when it comes to this season. Ian Cole getting his first goal as a Canuck. That was pretty cool. Pius Suter, 3-point night, first multi-goal game as a Canuck. It's up to 8 on the season now. Petey with 2 goals, up to 15. And funny enough, though, because Petey's been racking up the points, but it's almost like him and Miller. They just continue to just, you know, put points up, and it's almost like they're overshadowed to a certain degree, maybe by the fact that the Canucks are playing so well this year, and they're getting contributions from so many different people. I'm going to get into that in just a moment, but I mean, Petey's just doing his thing, up to 15 goals, as I mentioned, but only a second multi-goal game of the season, which I found quite surprising. He did have a hat trick earlier in the year, and Demko getting his 99th career win, which is pretty cool. He's 5th all-time now, tied with Jacob Markstrom on the all-time franchise leader list for that. And Marcus Naslund in the building tonight. Love seeing that. I love the fact that he's such a humble dude, and the fans just love him so much. You know, the West Coast Express era, of course, which is an incredible era for the Canucks and didn't really result in, you know, any Stanley Cups or anything like that, but a great era for the Canucks. But
not the only person of note in the building as well.
I was going to get to that as well. Yeah. Chad Kroger was in the building tonight.
Yeah, I mean, big name.
He was sitting with somebody else.
Somebody else. Yeah, I was He kind of looks like he's from a betting ad or something. Like I'm not too sure. Where
that guy used to play hockey. Was his last name Gretzky or something? Wayner was in the building. But again, like I said, the Canucks are wrapping up a pretty tidy win, 6-3 over the Ottawa Senators. Now they embark on their longest road trip of the season. So 7 games now for the Canucks on the road. St. Louis, New Jersey, both New York teams, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Columbus. The good part about that road trip, if I've got this right as I look at it, St. Louis isn't in the playoffs. New Jersey isn't in the playoffs. Both the New York teams are in the playoffs. Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Columbus currently not in the playoff spot. So 5 of the 7 teams that you're about to face are not in a playoff spot. And the Blues, which you're going to kick off against, have lost 2 straight. So that's good for the Canucks. Bodes well.
3 of those games are by bus, right? Or subway.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Once you get into the New York area, Jersey, I don't know the New York area at all. I'm kind of ashamed to say this because I grew up out east. I actually played quite a bit of hockey in upstate New York, but never been to New York City. So I don't really know like where the Islanders play as opposed to where the Rangers play, whatnot. But it's a big city, put it that way. You can take a bus there. But yeah, you're right. There's not a whole lot of travel. That St. Louis to New Jersey might be a bit of a pain in the ass, but there is a day in between as well. So the Canucks, see how they do on that. But just the way they've been rolling right now, Aaron, like it's hard to see them not, coming out of that with, without a winning, record really, because they've just been playing so well as of late. As I mentioned, the Eastern media catch and win. And I kind of say that tongue in cheek because James Myrtle from The Athletic, he's from Kamloops. It's funny because Myrtle gets painted with this like Leafs brush and he's had that for years. And James is a great guy, but he's a Kamloops guy. And it's funny because, I hear him doing hits on Toronto radio and whatnot. And, he mentions the Canucks quite a bit, actually. You can see there's pride. Local provincial pride, if you will. But the fact that they're, really starting to turn head and rightfully so, this is not a small sample size at this point. Like this Canucks team, first of all, they're making the playoffs. We know that. They're up to 51 points in the season now. It's incredible to say. Tied with the Colorado Avalanche and the Rangers. So actually, yeah, for second in the NHL in points in terms of point totals at 51. Boston's got 52 right now. But just to be at this mark, 37 games into the season at a plus 46 goal differential, it's like at first with this team, you're kind of like, all right, this is good. Like, this is awesome. And then as it just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling, you're like, this seems legit. And I was thinking about it the other day, Aaron, like you can look at other teams across Canada and sort of compare them. The Canucks are hands down Canada's best opportunity to win a Stanley Cup. And with all due respect to the Jets, of course. Mm-hmm. Like it's not even an argument right now. I know a lot of people think that the Oilers, might eventually pull themselves off the mat, and they have, they've won 6 in a row right now, and they're edging up on the playoff bar, and they've got enough star power. But when you look at sort of like the way a team is built to win a Stanley Cup, like a Vegas Golden Knights last year, like the Canucks kind of got what you need right now. They're getting depth scoring from the bottom 6. They've got, big defense. I think that's one of the things that kind of maybe flew under the radar in the offseason with the Vancouver Canucks is the fact that like they built out that defense. So a bunch of trees back there really outside of, Hughes really.
He's doing things. It was a little tighter before the Christmas break, but like kind of the quiet battle going on for goals there between the flow and the forehead of, who's in the top of goals in the league at the moment. But, Austin Matthews kind of pulled ahead a little bit.
And that forehead, it's only going to get bigger for Matthews. Yeah. Like that is an unfortunate hairline, dude. I mean, Austin Matthews got enough money. He could probably just hit up LeBron James and just see who his guy was, right? But yeah, you're right. The flow was definitely was putting him in. And he's slowed down a little bit over the last little while. But where he sort of slows down, Teddy Bluger, Dakota Joshua sort of pick up the pace after that. I mean,
where was Bluger on your bingo card? He's in the top right corner, man. Like,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The last 13 games for those guys, 30 points combined. And that's Bluger, Joshua, and Garland, which the Canucks have now found that third line, which is interesting too, because I believe I might have talked about it on the pod as well, is when you look at Teddy Bluger, like I kind of thought, all right, like, yeah, defensively, like sure, but third line center Teddy Bluger, I don't know. Like, is there going to be enough offense coming out of this guy? And sure enough, like he's, I believe, did a video last week that we put out on TikTok where he had 9 points in his last 7 games. Like, I mean, Bluger's just doing things that put it this way. He's he's exceeding what I think management thought he would be. And that's a good thing for the Canucks, obviously, right? So the fact that they're getting depth scoring right now, and I mean, even defensive scoring, which is something that was unheard of last year. And I know Ian Cole only got his first goal of the season this year, but others have been contributing, and it's not just Quinn Hughes at this point. So good to see all of that. Just to sort of go back a bit though, over the last little while since we were off there, I mean, outside of that Philly game, Aaron, I really liked the rest that we saw from the Canucks. I mean, even that in that loss to the Stars, like, you didn't like the fact that they blew the lead in the third period with 5 minutes to go and eventually lost it in overtime. But you got to keep in mind too, like, they crawled to get that lead back as well. So it was just a good sort of, blow for blow sort of game between them and the Stars, and a team that, like, let's face it, you could see deep into the playoffs, if the Canucks are able to get themselves there. So a good win in that regard, but just really like what I've seen from the Canucks in terms of whenever there's been any sort of dip, and there hasn't been more than 2 games really. They haven't had more than a 2-game losing streak all season, if I've got that correct. It is like it's unheard of with this Canucks team. I think at some point here, I gotta just recognize the fact that, like, yeah, this team is legit good, right? It shouldn't just surprise us anymore, I think, is the point I'm trying to make. It's like, okay, no, they're good. And as I was saying earlier, like, they just feel like they are, top to bottom, Canada's best chance to compete for a Stanley Cup. Now, trade deadline changes a lot of things for a lot of teams, and that'd be interesting to see where the Canucks go at that point. But I mean, if you look around this lineup right now, and with Carson Soucy about to come back, like, who comes out? Like, who would you even think about replacing? Maybe you dangle Kuzmenko because of the fact that you've got, some depth in terms of, some scorers, and maybe you want to bring in a different defensive player. Maybe you want to try to bring in a better defensive defenseman to upgrade that blue line. Who knows right now? Well,
and given the record of Kuzmenko sitting for a couple of games and then coming back and immediately scoring, sure, let's
But the problem with that though, Aaron, is that, he comes back and he scores, but then, which is great, but then he falls into those defensive lapses.
Yep.
And really that's what pisses Tocchet off the most, right? Is that he wants to see that balanced game from them. And like, Andrei Kuzmenko is doing you no good if he's on your fourth line, right? So that's the one piece that I wonder that maybe they'll dangle. I mean, you got to look around as well too. Like, they got Puck Colson still down in Abbotsford. Nils Höglander would probably be pretty enticing to some teams. Now, I'm not saying that the Canucks should trade someone like Nils Höglander.
No, I like Hogs is good, man.
I think when the Hog is going, he's going. And so again, these are good problems to have, and these are problems that good teams have. And like I said, the Canucks are just flat out a good team right now.
Well, I don't even want to mention this player's name to kind of put him in the talk of, like, moving him around, because I like what he's doing. It's Mikheyev. Like, you texted me earlier in the game, like early in the game, like, man, he's doing stuff. And I'm like,
I couldn't see Mikheyev being a chip that they would dangle. I mean, especially since they, invested into him as a free agent, and it was Rutherford and Alvin that signed him, right? Like, it's not like he's a Benning guy or anything like that. So again, though, it's just, these are good problems to have for the Canucks, because as you go into this trade deadline, you're going to be looking to improve your team, and improving a team that's, one of the best or top 3 in the NHL right now. Like, that's a damn good position to be in, right?
Mm-hmm. And we have Demko healthy, and then DeSmith, like, stepping up when, he needs to, when he's filling in for Demko. So it's like, who?
Casey DeSmith's been like sneaky good trade. Like, he's like, when you look at, and that's really the separator right now, it feels like, for the Canucks over, and let's just use Canadian teams as an example, because, if you look at the contending Canadian teams, I think you probably mentioned just 3 of them. I don't think the Flames would be in that conversation, and Edmonton definitely isn't in that conversation, or shouldn't sort of be in that conversation right now. But, going into the season, there was high hopes for the Oilers, and just who they have, right? Like, you got the best 2 players in the world, but goaltending has been the separator between that. And Toronto Maple Leafs struggling with their goaltending, and, they got a big win in LA, but like, the Canucks have no issues whatsoever when it comes to being in goal with Thatcher Demko and Casey DeSmith. So, yeah, I mean, again, just more depth. And I mean, look at Abbotsford as well. You got Seeloff still down there. So the Canucks are
who did great last season, I thought, when he had to come in. So,
and also too, it's like, it feels like with goaltending as well, is if you can have the opportunity, like let's say Seeloff's is the next guy. Who knows? I mean, Demko's still young and he's still got, I think 3 years left on that contract or 2 years left on that contract. Like you're not replacing him anytime soon, but at the same time too, like you have the ability to sort of let Artur Silovs be Artur Silovs and, find himself as a pro. And using Toronto as an example, like look what's happening with them. They've sent down Samsonov to the minors. They've got this 22-year-old that they've brought up here who probably shouldn't be here right now. And that would be the situation for Silovs as well. So yeah, I think right now, I just think the Canucks are in a fantastic position when it comes to their goaltending. One of the things that I was looking at that I thought was pretty cool, like just digging into the analytics a little bit. And if you haven't had a chance to check out that NHL Edge site, there's some really cool stuff on there, some interesting stats. But I was looking at like high danger chances and, just that scoring plate that everybody talks about in front of the net. The Canucks going into tonight, by the way, because it hasn't been adjusted yet. So this is going into the game against Ottawa, depending on when you're listening to this. But the Canucks led the NHL in high danger goals at 79. So before the Ottawa game, their shooting percentage in high danger area was at 27%. It was 3% higher than the Hurricanes. So when people do talk about PDO and they talk about shooting percentage, sure, like that's where, and you got a high shooting percentage, that's going to come down. But when your shooting percentage is, almost a quarter or over a quarter in that played area, in that high danger area, like, yeah, sure, there's luck, but there's a shit ton of skill that's involved in that as well. Right. And that's, then we're seeing that from Brock Besser this year as well. I believe he's got 10 goals in the high danger area. Like, so yeah, you can chalk it up to luck to a certain degree, but there's also skill involved in there. And the skill is that when you get it in that spot, you snipe it home. Right. So I thought that was pretty cool to see. Also, the Canucks aren't in the top 10. No Canuck player, that is in the top 10 for high danger shots on goal. So that even shows you like when they do get the opportunity, A, they're a quarter of the time they're burying it, but also B, it's also spread out at that point. So there's not only, a handful of guys that are getting those opportunities, which I thought was, I mean, that just tells you a lot about this team right now, is that when they do get the chance, they bury it. And the fact that they're able to do it, spread out amongst the lineup is something that I think Canuck fans can hang their hat on. I'm trying to sell you a case right now for why I think the Vancouver Canucks are Canada's best hope to win a Stanley Cup, because they have all of that right now, it seems like. And, after even a game like tonight, I just kind of thought that, all right, let's see how the new year goes. Like, let's see how these days off go, but they picked up no problem. And coming off that loss to Philadelphia, which I don't know about you, like, I thought maybe was their worst outing of the year. I thought it was a good game for Philadelphia. It was also just
weird schedule wise, man.
Yeah, they had there was like Saturday and then they were off till Thursday, and then they didn't play again until Tuesday.
Yeah.
Now, of course, with that, there is the Christmas break in between that as well, right? There is that as well. But yeah, I mean, again, like if you're sort of looking at games that maybe the Canucks might have a tough time with, like that one against Philadelphia, which they ended up doing, that made sense. But then coming back from this and being able to handle the Sens the way they did, coming back from the break, it's pretty remarkable. But I think at the same time, too, it says a lot about Rick Tocchet. And I think it says a lot about like where the players are in terms of buying into Rick Tocchet, because he had these guys prepared to play tonight. Oh, yeah. And this could have been a tough one for them. So,
and also I think it sets the pace now, because I think we were talking during the Christmas break of just like, ooh, I don't know, man. St. Louis, then New Jersey, then back-to-backs in New York, and then the Penguins. Like that, they kind of need to set the tone right. I don't think they can go into this upcoming road game streak with a loss, right? So,
yeah, I mean, that might be a good point too, in terms of like, the way that Tocchet's got them sort of prepared for that as well. Like, hey guys, like, we got our longest roadie of the season coming up here. Let's make sure we're ready for it, right? I think one of the things too with Tocchet that I really like about him, and I know I've praised him before on the pod, when you watch him interact with the media, like he listens to you, he looks you in the eye. Like there's a ton of respect there. And not saying that Bruce Boudreau didn't have that. I will say that I didn't think that Travis Green had a lot of that, but at the same time too, Travis Green was pretty much always pissed off during his tenure here as the head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, because things weren't going very well here. The organization was a mess from the top down when he was the head coach. So you can see why there would be some frustration there. But like, it just seems like Tocchet's just, I think he just understands it. And it might have something to do with the fact that, you know, he's been in the media and he's been on that side, and which
I'm sure TNT trained him a little bit before putting him on air. Yeah.
And that was I've said this before. It was a massive loss for us as viewers as well. Massive gain for the Vancouver Canucks organization to have a coach like Rick Tocchet. But as far as us, the viewers, and you know, watching hockey, like, he was fantastic as an analyst. So you can see that the players are really buying into, you know, what Toc and you know, essentially Gonchar and Foote are selling them. All right, guys, like mentioned, we're going to be back every Monday here on a regular basis for you guys. But do follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, on YouTube as well. We'll have some more content coming out on there that'll be exclusive just to that and not here on the podcast.
Without rambling off all the handles, just go to sportshouse.ca. That's HAUS. It's all there.
Yeah, that's sports, HAUS, house.ca, to get all the goods from us. All right, everyone. See you next time.